Alright, we're back at the bench here. Let's never mind this stuff. It's another knife I'm working on. But let's kind of pre-assemble everything on this and kind of see how the tones go together. So I got my nickel silver, which I still have to polish, up against the dark blade, which gives a very nice contrast, with my stacked copper, which has yet to get needs to get polished. So that's nickel silver, copper, OD green G10, because when the copper patinas, I want the green to pick it up at a different hue. And actually a rare wood, this is yellow Alaskan cedar burl. My buddy's a duck call maker. He scored some and he gave me a little bit of it, and from what I understand, it's a rare wood. So that gives a nice contrast. Now to top that off, we got a Cocobolo handle. So as I explained to you guys, I like thinking outside the box. I like going with something that's different. This is forcing me to do a leather sheath, my first leather sheath. So like I said, I've never done this before. So what I'm going to do is I kind of drew a location of where the tang sits in the wood. It's not the right location. I'm going to erase that, figure out the exact location. Then I'm going to scribe out how I want the handle to look, the length of it, all that type of stuff. Then I'm going to go to the bandsaw. I'm going to rough cut the profile out. I'm going to polish all this here, glue my bolster, I guess is what it's called. Glue the bolster on. Once that's done, I'll glue the handle on, and then I'll shape the handle. And I'm told that with this wood, it's very oily, so all I'm going to need to do is polish it. I'm not going to have to apply a true oil finish or anything like that. I think that's more true with the African blackwood that I have. That's a nice wood. You know, it was a hard decision, but I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted to broaden my horizons. I wanted to try a different technique. I want people to know that I'm capable of making whatever knife is desired. No, by no means am I out of the woods. There's a lot of things that could go awry, but I'm taking you guys along for the ride, and you'll see. And if I fail, guess what? You'll learn from my failure. So when we come back, it'll be kind of exciting, as far as exciting as knife making can be and goes. I'll pre-polish the bolster, pre-polish everything, get everything all nice and shiny and ready to rock and roll. We'll glue on that bolster. I've devised kind of a method that's primitive that you can use in any shop. I make jigs for everything. It comes from what I've had to do for a living for, seems like forever. I haven't decided if I'm going to use actually the JB epoxy, or if I'm going to use JB weld, or if I'm going to use J-Flex. They're all the same. Don't be fooled that J-Flex is better than this epoxy here. I had a guy that bought one of my bushcraft knives, and he uses it for diving and swimming in the ocean. It's 1084 steel, and it was mirror polished. He has no problems with it, as far as I know. I did a lot of testing with it, this JB Weld epoxy. I glued when I first got it into knife making. I tried a bunch of different epoxies. I glued it onto a piece of steel, threw it in the dishwasher, high heat, no failure. It gets very cold here. Out in the cold, I heated it up and I took it outside, no failure. Threw it down on the ground from 15 foot up on a ladder, 16 foot up on a ladder. Threw it down on asphalt, no break. So I'm calling this stuff good. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna let you guys go here, and when we come back, I'm going to show you the jig. I'll do some footage of how I made it. It's very simple. I might just explain to you how I made the jig in order to clamp that bolster in while I epoxy it in place. And you got to be real clean with it, because once you get the forward thing of that bolster, the nickel silver part, you don't want to screw it up. So you want to make sure that you clean. And another thing I'm going to say, you don't want to tape your blade, and I'll explain that to you too. Alright guys, so I just put everything together, kind of drew out a rough line. It's hard to see on this dark wood. I'm going to take it to the bandsaw. I'm just going to rough it. I'm oversizing it. And that's what I'm going to do. The rest of the work will be done the sander. Pretty much I just used French curves, kind of looked at it. I made it oversized so I can make adjustments for a different swoop, everything like that. I marked where my tang sits within the handle. I'm going to adjust this a little bit, and I'm going to take it over to the bandsaw. Now, when you're working with exotic hardwoods, this is Cocobolo. Some people have known to have reactions to it, so I have the long sleeves. I'll put on gloves and a respirator. Okay guys, came back from the bandsaw. One thing I learned a long time ago is to leave a lot of extra meat, because you could always sand to it. Probably going to shorten the handle to here, but I leave it there just in case, because I can always cut that off. I can't add it back on. So once I get this bolster, I think is what it's called, or guard, glued on, epoxied on, let that sit, then I'll epoxy the handle on. Then it's over to the sanding to shape this. I think it's a nice color combination. Another thing I have to do is I have to etch my maker's mark on there, which I'll probably do a video of. I gotta do that before I attach this guard, bolster, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what the nomenclature is, but that's where I'm at right now. Alright guys, I chose to use JV Well, basically because of the tensile strength. It's 3,960 psi. Set time is 4 to 6 hours, cure time is 15 to 24 hours. I got time. And because it cures gray in color, considering that the blade is gray in color, I've cleaned the entire blade with isopropyl alcohol. You want to have isopropyl alcohol on hand to clean off any residue immediately. Paper towels, mixing sticks for the JV Well, a mixing block, just a piece of plywood is all I'm using. What I have is a long skinny, it's called a bamboo skewer, and the point on it is very nice for digging out epoxy afterwards. You definitely want to have gloves. You don't want this epoxy all over your hands. You want all your parts laid out in front of you. Some saran wrap. I'll explain that later. And this is a homemade tool, jig if you will, made out of mahogany hardwood. That is, I'll show you how I intend to use it. It's part of clamping it on. This caulking gun, let me zoom out a little. It's something I had around the house, and I'm going to use it for a clamp, and I'll show you how I do that. So now I'm going to relocate you at a different angle so you can kind of see what's going on without having to see my pack. I want to be able to see and get anything that's in the way. Anything that drips out, I don't want to dry and try to have to remove hardened JB weld. So the next thing I do is I just do a quick dry fit, look at everything. So one nice thing about JB Weld is it has a long working time, so you're not rushing like with epoxy. So take your time. So now I'm going to mix up the JB Weld. I always mix up more than what I think I'm going to need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some, you can see it, I'm going to put it kind of on the inside of the guard here, inside of my hole, so I get a good bond. It's going to spooge out. I'm trying not to make it spooge all over the place, but you know, it's gonna, and I know that. I'm going to take my little stick, I'm going to pack that in there. Try not to get it on the nickel silver too much, but it's going to get on there no matter what I do. And some of the JB Weld is going to come out through the side in between the nickel silver and the copper. So now I allowed for a little hole, a little bit of extra room in here if you can see that. I'm going to pack epoxy in there as best as I can. I cut everything up in small sections kinda, and I clean as I go. Okay, so now I have my little trick with my caulking. So this is the caulking gun and how I have it set up. Okay, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel back the tip. So the tip is exposed. Okay. And I'll show you why later. So what I do is I take this little slotted piece of hardwood, which fits this Tang, and it pushes on the bolster. And then just like a clamp, I hold it straight, I push it together. And now what that is doing, it's sandwiching everything together. It's allowing any epoxy to push out, so you got to clean it again. Okay? And it's keeping the Tang suspended in the middle. Very cheap, easy solution. Now I'm going to remove my gloves. You don't have to keep them on, but I got some epoxy on. I'm going to go back to my alcohol. If you can see, I don't know if you can, but down in here, in the front of the guard, there's some JB Weld that oozed out. You want to clean that. You don't want that to be there, and you don't want to deal with dry JB Weld. And I'll scrape what I can off with it. So I'm going to leave it like that right now instead of going any further. One big thing with doing anything is knowing when to say when. Okay? There's a little spot that I could do a little fill in, but I could do that after when it's not in the clamp. Here, just caulking gun piece of hardwood and another piece of wood sandwiched together to push this in place and hold it. Now I'm just going to find a safe place to put this, leave it there, forget about it until tomorrow. Alright guys, now if you remember before, the handle was like a big block of wood, so what I did now is I just roughed it out. I roughed the handle out. That's all I did. I oversized it. I roughed it so I have less work I have to do at the grinder. I left a ton of meat. I'll carve it down, shape it down to whatever I need. Clamp it, clean it, let it sit. So yeah, I'll zoom you in on the bench at what I'm doing. Again, I'm wearing gloves, got my trusty alcohol, but this time I'm switching over to epoxy, so I'll zoom you in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to scoop it, and I'm just going to dump it down in the hole, and I'm going to let it just go in there. I'm going to pack it in there. I don't care if it gets on the handle. I really don't. Wow, I love getting this stuff on the Cocobolo. It really makes that grain pop. Can't wait to see how that's going to turn out. I don't want you just to look at my hands, which you might have. Just take the Tang, push it in. Make sure I'm seeing as I'm pushing it in. I'm making sure that I see the epoxy coming out. I'm just taking the alcohol, cleaning it. I'm paying close attention to the intersection where the copper meets the wood handle. So you can see I got this pushed down. There's that little area in there that I cleaned up. So I'm going to put it in my little vise. I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to clean this area up, make sure everything's cleaned up with alcohol, and I'll show you a little more because it's a little bit difficult to get everything in frame when I'm trying to zoom in to show you guys what I'm doing, hoping you're seeing it. I'll get better at this as time goes on, but I'll also have like an explanation of what I did and why I did after. This is where we're at. At this point, I'm going to store it this way. I'm going to hang it just on a nail like this. Somewhere in the shop I'll hang it so that any ooze out or anything that may occur is going to go downward and not towards my blade and towards the metal. Next time when I come back, I'm going to shape this blade out over on using multiple tools, but mostly on the grinder. Get it to final shape, figure out how it's going to fit my hand, how I like it, everything like that. Then we'll just we'll either try to buff a finish and see. I'm told that this wood will buff very nice. If not, I go to my Old Faithful, which is True Oil. I'll show you the application of that if that arises. So for now, until next time, that's it. And thanks for watching, guys.